just want to see what this message says, but it's okay. No, that's fine. All right. Okay. So let's start this evening. I'd like to welcome everybody, and especially we've got a few new members: Alicia Stokes, Carolyn Stradom, Chris Rebo, Jane Sealander, Rena Benz, and then Sean Rogachnik has rejoined us. And then there are just two notices I want to mention. Sales are very slow at Kirstenbosch, but there are lots of happy viewers and lots of compliments for the wonderful work and the standard of work that's up there at the moment. The exhibition ends tomorrow. Please remember to collect your work in your allocated time slot so that we can keep some social distancing. And I want to say a huge thank you to all of those who have helped us in any way at this time. And then this weekend, we've got another exhibition at Constantia Village. Mm-hmm. They've already put up a lovely post on their Facebook and Instagram pages. And it would be really nice if we could also share that, please. And let's hope for a wonderful weekend there. But okay, so on to tonight's presentation. I just want to say thank you to Lizzie, who always does a sterling job in the background, because without her, none of this would happen. And we are thrilled to have Di McNaughton, who's well known to a lot of you and was a member of CAS before leaving South Africa. We are delighted to have her talking tonight all the way from a very chilly Scotland. As usual, we'll have questions afterwards, so you can send questions through on the chat function, or you can WhatsApp them to me on 072 322 1745. And I will ask Di afterwards. Okay, so over to you, Di.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to now share the screen here. There we are. Right, hello everybody. Greetings from chilly Scotland. We have got a lot of snow here, and it even snowed today. And I'm thinking of you all in that lovely warm Cape Town. And just thank you for inviting me to be part of your meeting. It's such fun. I have such fond memories of coming to CAS meetings. You know, I think it was at the Meadowridge, was it the library hall, and then the hospital. I don't know where you met before the COVID happened, but such a warm welcome always when I came along. Good luck for your new exhibition. I've been watching on Facebook, your pictures on Facebook for the Kirstenbosch exhibition, and it looks lovely. And I hope the one, Constantia Village, is a great place. So yeah, so it should be a lovely exhibition. Just let me there we go. I'm going to do a demo in a minute, but I'm just going to give a little bit of a talk about what's happened to me since I left Cape Town, or even before that. And I've been thinking a lot about this thing called sense of community, how we as artists often are in our studios and spend hours on our own, but we really do need to connect with each other. And that's why art societies are so brilliant. And I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have my lovely groups of different artists and you know, art societies and things like that. As you know, I've spent many years in Cape Town. I was actually born in England, but brought up in Cape Town. And I have very warm feeling about Cape Town because my mum and my sister and my brothers live there. And then, of course, all my lovely friends that I miss, plein air group. We used to go out on a Monday. As you can see the picture down here at the bottom here. We were at a wine farm there painting the dam and the mountains. And the farmer came and put up his umbrellas for us and then brought trays of wine for us to drink. So, you know, I really miss these lovely people. And then, of course, the exhibitions at Kirstenbosch. Look at that beautiful place. I mean, you cannot compare it to anywhere else in the world. You're so lucky to have such a lovely exhibition hall. So when we were in Cape Town, it was a really busy time, and you're always trying to find time to paint. You know, there's so many other things to do. And about 14 years ago, we ended up going to Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. I'm sorry, I've got sort of slides behind here. I don't know what you guys can see. And I thought, well, this will be brilliant because, well, my husband's working. I'll really have time to paint. I'll really get down. I'll have so much time. This block of flats here on the right-hand side is where we lived, and we lived on the 11th floor. And as you can see at the bottom, it's just sand. And on the left-hand side, that's the view from our lounge window. So it's just high-rise buildings and sand. And we didn't see the blue sky because of the sand whipping up with the air. And I felt like I was in a sensory deprivation. It was most peculiar because there was nothing to see. And I'm so used to beautiful Cape Town and going out with my plein air friends. And what on earth was I going to paint? And I also felt very alone because it was a very kind of strict Muslim place. Sharjah is next to Dubai, but it's a bit like Saudi Arabia. And I felt a real outsider, and very little English was spoken. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? You know, what have come here? And I wrote this list. I wrote this thing called, and I called it Food for the Soul. What do I need to keep me in balance, and the sort of thing. And I listed, it weren't material things, but I listed all the things that I love. And at the bottom, it said sense of community. So so I got painting, and I decided to experiment with acrylics. I'd been painting with oils and watercolors before. And I thought I'd try acrylics because I got sort of bad sort of headaches from the oils. So I started splashing around with my acrylics, abstract, just making marks. And then this weird woman appeared, really dark looking woman with tears dripping. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've painted something, you know, emotional really. And I hated it. And I thought, I've got to lighten it up. So I have to put sort of white paint on and red and yellow and make it happy. And in the process of doing that, I lifted my spirits. It was a really strange thing. So I ended up painting quite a few different paintings in a completely different style. So it was a really good experience. Then we came back to Cape Town, and Lynn was, she sort of got me going. She said to me, why don't you demonstrate your watercolor techniques? We were all going out plein air painting, and most people were painting in oils. And as you know, there's lots to take with you, and watercolor is so portable. And Lynn said to me, come on, just show us what you do. And I said, oh no, I'm too shy, and I'm so scared of messing up. It's a huge thing when you've never done it before to try and have a go. But she said, we're just your friends, you know, we'll you know, it doesn't matter. And we sat on June Hyman's veranda there, and we've actually got this picture in the newspaper because we were actually going to have an exhibition, and June got this reporter to come along and take a picture of us. But anyway, so I did this demo, and it was so good because I started thinking about why I do things and why I paint like this and how do I share that. And it was a really interesting experience, and they seemed to enjoy it, and I really enjoyed it. And then a couple of weeks later, I was sitting at Kirstenbosch, one of the exhibitions, and Cherry Nichols, or God bless her soul, came along and saw one of my pictures and says, oh, can you come and do a demo at Somerset West? And it was a mixed media. And I said, okay, I'll try. And I thought, okay, I'll prepare it like one of these cooking demonstrations on the television. I'll have one at one stage and one in the middle and then the other, you know, get very prepared. And it was quite scary. But she says, we're just a friendly bunch. And I went and I did this. And at the end, they all said, well, come on, you've got to come and do a workshop. And so it opened up a whole new sort of era for me, which is absolutely amazing. So then, of course, life changes. And about 6 years ago, we actually relocated to Scotland. My husband is Scottish and my children live in England, and we now have little grandchildren. And it was such a pull. I know it's hard because my mum was in Cape Town, but my sister was there, my brothers, and I wanted to be near my children and grandchildren. And my husband said, well, we live in Scotland, not in England, and you can go down on the train. So Edinburgh is the most beautiful city. It's a tiny city. It's only 500,000 people, but it's got this huge heart and incredibly cultural. You can walk into the churches in the centre of Edinburgh at lunchtime, and there's a classical concert going on, and it's free. You know, all these classical pianists and things want to try out, and then you can go into the galleries and there's free lectures going on. So it's a lovely city. But of course, I didn't know anybody. So Nolene actually said to me before I left, have a look at Meetup. You know, Meetup Edinburgh online. So I went, okay, so I went Meetup Edinburgh, and all these groups came up, you know, Meetup singing, Meetup walking, Meetup climbing, and then there was Meetup sketching. So I joined online, and they said, well, go at 12 o'clock. They're meeting in the museum, because it was the middle of winter, at the museum cafe. So I went along and I thought, oh, I hope somebody speaks to me, you know, oh, I hate it, but I felt like first day at school. So, and I went along, and they were amazing. They were lovely people, so welcoming. And suddenly I had a group of people who I could relate to, and I just, oh, they were lovely. That's a picture of us sitting under the umbrellas. We got caught in a downpour at the Botanical Gardens, and it was absolutely dripping, pouring down. We do get sunshine as well. And then a couple of us decided we wanted to have a midweek group, because Sunday can be a little bit awkward when you've got a husband and everything. So we decided to form a group on a Wednesday morning, and we formed the Edinburgh Urban Sketchers, and we affiliated with the International Urban Sketchers. And it was such a lovely group, because what we would do is we'd meet at 10 o'clock at a designated place. And we'd go outside if it wasn't raining, or we'd stay in we would meet in a cafe, we would sit in the cafe and order lots of coffees and stay there and draw and paint. And whatever we did, we'd always meet back there at 12 o'clock, and we'd order a coffee or a bowl of soup and sit down together and pass around our sketchbooks and have a chat. And it was, oh, it's just a lovely feeling. They're super people. And from that, we've had workshops. We've had Ian Fennelly, who's an international urban sketcher, come and give us a workshop. We've had 2 very successful exhibitions. So it really, it's been wonderful for me here in Edinburgh. Here are some of my sketches. Edinburgh is a lovely place to sketch, because the buildings are all still very old. There's no sort of high-rise buildings. It's very quaint. Here is the Storytelling Centre. I don't know if, can you see my little, I don't know if you can see the little cursor there. Storytelling Centre, and it's something from the 15th century. And this one down here is the Writers' Museum. So yeah, and then here is a sort of a silhouette of St. Giles Cathedral with a statue in front. So lots and lots to draw and paint. So I was just getting settled. And then, of course, my husband gets a job in Malaysia for 2 years. So we have to go. Kuala Lumpur. Well, first of all, Seremban and then Kuala Lumpur. But I was well sorted this time. I mean, when we were in Sharjah, we didn't even have internet for the first couple of months inside, and I had to go along to the internet cafe to get my emails. This time in Kuala Lumpur, I had my iPad, and I had all my books and my recipes and my music and everything on my iPad. So I was okay in that way. And then, of course, I looked up Kuala Lumpur Urban Sketchers on Facebook, and there was a group. And I looked up where they were going to meet. They met on a Sunday morning, and they put the place and the nearest station. And I thought, okay, and Malaysia is incredibly relaxed and non-threatening place. The people are very gentle, so you feel very safe. And I didn't want to drive because the roads are not brilliant. So the public transport was amazing, trains and buses. And then also they had this thing like Uber, but it's called Grab Car, and it was incredibly cheap. And you only wait 5 minutes, and they take you wherever you want to go. So it was absolutely brilliant. So we would meet, and there was a real mixture of people. There was Malaysians, there were a big group of Chinese and Hindu Indians, people from Russia and Australia and myself. So you can see this group, a real mixture. When I went the first day, it was Chinese New Year, and I did this little sort of sketch in my sketchbook. And one of the ladies, Xian, she took my sketchbook and she made this Chinese sort of marking, and she said it means prosperity. And she wrote this lovely welcoming little message in my sketchbook, you know, really welcoming me, which I thought was lovely. And we did some really interesting things. A cafe where we actually met quite often asked us to decorate one of the walls of the cafe, and they sort of painted a long strip. And each of us had to draw one of the buildings that was close by to the cafe with a big fat Koki chalk, so you couldn't actually make a mistake. And we ended up with this lovely long frieze, and I think about 22 buildings all joined together. And we joined them together with little washing lines and things like that. And it was amazing. So there I am doing my bits. And then I sketched the sketches while they were drawing on the wall. So here are some of my sketches from Kuala Lumpur. I've got a lovely book that Lynn actually recommended, Stillman and Byrne sketchbooks. They're lovely. So I sort of paint right across the middle. And this was the top left-hand one. We were sitting right in the middle of an intersection with traffic going everywhere and drawing and painting. It was amazing. And then the textile museum there. And then, of course, in the bottom right, everybody in Malaysia, they don't have kitchens. They don't cook at home. Everybody eats on the street. So there's all these street cafes, and food is incredibly cheap in these markets. So I sat across the road and drew one of these. So that was KL. Then we came back to Scotland, and I really fancied a house with a garden, and we really couldn't afford that in Edinburgh. Edinburgh is really an expensive place to buy, and we could afford a flat, but I'm really not a flat person. So we've looked everywhere, and we found this house in this little village. It's south of Edinburgh, but we have a station, and I can catch the train into Edinburgh or the train into Glasgow, so I can still go non-COVID times to meet my group, which is great. Here's a couple of little sketches I've just done recently in the snow. And in our little village, we are in a beautiful part. I didn't even know when we found the house because we liked the house, but a beautiful part of Scotland. We've got about 1 kilometre away is this big river called the Mouse Water. I mean, look, I don't know why it's called Mouse. You think of a little trickle of a stream, but it's a huge raging river with all these lovely walks along the side, pathways, lovely. And then on the extreme right is the Clyde. We have, it's about a mile and a half, 2 kilometres away from us. And we have what's called the Falls of Clyde. And there's about 4 different waterfalls, beautiful waterfalls with paths all the way along. I don't know if you can see this waterfall. It's called Coralin. And we're way up high where the path is on the left-hand side of it. We still want to, there's some paths on the other side which we need to explore where you can get right down close to it. Now this waterfall, Turner absolutely loved. And he came up here when he was 26 years old in 1801. And this is his sketch of Coralin up here in the left-hand side. And he did a whole lot of sketches. You can look it up, you know, of the different waterfalls and the different places that he came to. And then he only did this Falls of Clyde watercolor. I can't see the date. I think it was 1834. And then, or 34, yes. And then he did this most beautiful painting when he was 70 years old of Coralin. You know, how he lost all that sort of hard lines and it was just atmospheric. And so it's so beautiful. So it's lovely to walk in the footsteps of Turner. So we're in a lovely place. Then, of course, then I was so lucky to have the opportunity just recently. I really fancied teaching watercolor again. But it was very hard. It's very hard to establish yourself in a new country. People don't know you. But I was lucky to get this opportunity to teach on one of the ships, and then I got a few more. In 2019, we went on 4 different trips. But the interesting thing when you're teaching passengers is you get some that have painted before, but you get some that have never touched a paintbrush or a pencil, and they like to try it out. So this picture in the middle here, I had 15 people in the morning and 15 in the afternoon, and only one person had ever touched a pencil before, you know, to draw. So I had to develop these lessons that they weren't going to feel really freaked out by, you know, that they would actually enjoy, but also for the couple that had painted before would enjoy as well. So it was quite a challenge to create these lessons where they would have fun and they would carry on, because otherwise by the end of the cruise I wouldn't have any people coming to my lessons. So it was a really fantastic experience. I was able to take my husband as well, which was great fun. And I taught on sea days. So on port days, we were able to go and explore. And I decided to create a travel sketch journal wherever we go. So we go and explore a bit, and then I'll always find somewhere to sit down and do a bit of a sketch. It's so lovely, rather than just have photographs, to have a sketch of a place. And if I'm with my husband, I'll do a sort of a quick half-hour sketch while he does his Sudoku and waits for me. But sometimes we would come back and I'd leave him on the ship and then come off again, and then go off for an hour or two and then do a sort of more detailed sketch if the weather was nice. So yes, that was it. And then of course our pandemic happened, and all that stopped, all my things cancelled, which has happened to all of us. And you know, you've got to think, oh, you know, there I am just painting. And what point is that when there's all these nurses and doctors? I'm a previous nurse, so I know what they were going through, working so hard. And you thought, well, how can I help in any way? And then I thought of all the poor people who are on their own. My own mum, you know, I was telling Sue, she's 90 and she was in Cape Town. She was all on her own, you know, and it was just horrendous. And I got to thinking that, you know, the power of art, you know, if we can spread the word and get people painting, it's really a wonderful thing. I don't know if you know about this woman called Elizabeth Layton. I love her story. She is an American, and she was about 68 and she'd never painted before. She was a retired journalist in America in 1977, and suffering from terrible depression, and her daughters didn't know what to do with her. And then they decided, well, why don't you go to an art class, Mum? And they enrolled her on a drawing class. It was contour drawing. And she went along and she really enjoyed it. And she started doing all these selfies, as you can see, selfies of herself. Now she's a journalist, so you can see this one on the left is a drawing of herself, but with stroke. Now it's so interesting how she's done the face there. And then the one in the middle is remembering names. You know, we all have this problem with remembering names. And the next one is censored. This old woman is bound and gagged and can no longer draw. And her principles have been X'd out. And then masks. And she said that by taking up drawing, it actually saved her life and cured her depression. I mean, it's such a lovely story. And so she just drew hundreds and hundreds of these drawings for the rest of her days, till I think she lived till 82 or 83. And her drawings are now in 200 galleries in America. I mean, she's well known. And she only took it up when she was 68. And that's amazing. So I got to think, okay, what can I do? And I thought, well, if I put some of my lessons on YouTube and make free lessons for people, starting right at the beginning, and maybe people can start painting and it can help them. There's so many people with lots of time on their hands. And then what I did was I put links on the local Facebook sites here. We've got a Facebook site called Love Lanark, with everybody's on it, and people post lovely photographs and things like that. And I put links saying, anybody want to learn to paint, you know, come along and see what you can do and contact me. So I've had people do this, and I think it's been a fantastic experience for me. My sister said to me, but why are you doing this? Because you're not making any money, are you? You're not charging for it. Because she thought, well, when you subscribe for a video, do you pay? And I said, no, it's free to subscribe on YouTube. You don't have to pay. So that's what I've been doing. So that's why I thought it's all about the sense of community. How can we get everybody creating. I mean, it's not only painting and drawing, it's working in the garden and cooking and things like that, which everybody has. Now, I want to talk to you quickly about my demo. Lizzie's going to put it on in a minute. I'm going to be painting my grandma's teapot and cup. Now, this lovely teapot and cup I have with me. And she used this teapot every day. You know, it was for their 11s and their afternoon tea. Now that's her. They got married in 1926, and they had this teapot since then. And they lived in London, and they lived through the Second World War in London. And now London was exposed to something called the London Blitz. That was in about 1940-41, where London was bombarded continually, day and night, for 56 days with bombs. Can you imagine the stress of hearing those aeroplanes and the whining noises and the sirens, the explosions? It's just horrendous. Can you imagine living through that? Now, what do the British people do when they're anxious? They make a pot of tea, don't they? So I look at this pot and I think, I wonder about all the anxious moments that this little pot has helped to calm. And I would love to be sort of a fly on the wall to hear the conversations that this little pot has heard. My mum met my dad when she was 14 and he was 16, and she went round there as a teenager and had tea out of this this teapot. So yes, so I'm going to paint this little teapot. So if Lizzie would like to put on the video, but I'm going to stop share with this. There we go. Just see what happens. There we go.
I've put my lovely teapot and cup with a light on the side so I can get a nice contrast. I'm just going to briefly tell you about the materials I'm using. I have a bit of Bockingford watercolour paper here, 300 grams, and I'm using this lovely tape. It's framing tape. You've seen it? It seems to work much better than masking tape. Masking tape, when you use quite a lot of water, tends to lift up, and I'm really enjoying this framing tape to keep the paper nice and secure. I'm going to just use 3 colours in my painting, a red, yellow and a blue. I've got aureolin here, which is a Daniel Smith one for my yellow, manganese blue, which is an M. Graham, and permanent carmine, which is Winsor and Newton. And I'm going to do the whole painting just using the 3 colours. My brushes, I have a lovely, I've got 2 of them actually, beautiful Da Vinci squirrel mops. They are so gorgeous for painting with watercolour. Just a couple of years ago I discovered them, and I prefer them to sable, because sable tends to lose their points so much more quickly than these brushes. And these brushes hold so much liquid. Really enjoy them. I also have a squirrel sword brush. I'm not using it in this video, but I love this brush as well. Rigger, and I have a little acrylic brush, which is a nylon brush, which I use for lifting dry paint. Really useful. I use a sponge for wiping off excess liquid from my brush. It's really useful just having it sitting here rather than a cloth, because I always seem to put my cloth down somewhere and I can't find it. So the sponge is great. In preparation for my painting, I do a little bit to get the shapes right and the values, and this really helps me when I come to paint. I know what I understand and I know what I'm going to paint. I get the drawing right, and I can actually do a tracing and then transfer the tracing onto my watercolor paper. It just helps the watercolor paper, because if you do a lot of rubbing out on your watercolor paper, you can actually damage the surface, and so I prefer to do it this way. I have my 3 puddles of colours, and I'm painting on my first layer. I have aureolin, permanent carmine and manganese blue. And I'm just going to paint over the whole of the paper except for some highlight areas. I prefer permanent carmine to alizarin crimson here when I'm mixing on the paper. Alizarin crimson can be really aggressive and take over the other colours, and permanent carmine is much more well behaved. I'm just adding my 3 colours onto the paper. They're very wet and juicy, so they will dry quite pale, but at least I've got some colour to get going with in this first layer. I've got to try and keep the washed edges damp so that I don't get too many hard lines. The only hard lines I want are where the highlights are. Where do I decide? How do I decide what colours to put where? I'm kind of just basically using the yellow for the lighter areas, the red for the mid-tones, and the blue for the shadow areas. But of course they're all mixing on the paper and it doesn't really matter. I can also lift out some of the paint if it's in the wrong place. I also want quite a sort of mottled effect. I don't want a too smooth effect over the paper. I like to have a little bit of character going here. I'm just painting that sort of shadow side there of the cup and round the saucer. There's a nice chink of light there that isn't a highlight, but I want to try and keep it light. But I'm just trying to cover the whole paper. Getting into the saucer there with some colour. And then I'm just that little chink of light. Well, I've put some yellow there, but it's quite bright. But I can lift it off. Let's try and lift off some now. I'll probably have to wait till it's dry to lift off some. I'm going to warm up the cup a little bit while it's still all wet. Add some stronger colour now that I've covered most of the paper. Now I'll just let it mix a bit. Now there's that shadow in the cup. That inside of the cup, half of it is in a shadow area and the other half is in the light. So I love to try and get that sorted. And there's a lovely chink of highlight on the edge of the cup. And I'm just softening some edges there. I don't want the transition to be hard. And I've wet my brush and I'm just lifting out there on the handle of the cup, lifting out a bit of paint and softening that highlight area there. And I think that layer is just about done. And I'm going to let this dry now before I start on my next layer. So my first layer is now dry and I'm going to paint on my second layer. And I'm coming in doing a little bit of negative painting around the edge of the pot where the pot hits the light. And it's lovely because it actually shows the shape of the pot. And the light areas on the pot there, I can leave unpainted. It's the right value already, so that's great. I'm just painting on the inside of the handle, making sure on the outside and the inside the colours match. And there's a bit of a shadow on the handle there that I'm going to paint in now, just so it becomes soft and there's not too many hard edges there. There's a little shadow there on the top of the handle. Now I'm going to carry on the other side of the teapot, the shadow side. So I'm just softening the bottom of the wash there. I don't want a hard line there. And I'm going to bring it through behind the teapot, but I'm going to continue the shadow onto the teapot. At this stage, I'm not going to create too many hard lines if I can on that side. Now this is quite a big wash because I'm painting on dry paper and I need to keep that edge going. So I've got an edge at the top and then I've got an edge on the teapot. I'm going to come round the spout. So I'm watching that paper. While it's glistening, I know that it's still wet and it's okay to let it stand for a little bit. I'm actually just dampening that area so that it doesn't create the hard line at the top there. Now let's concentrate on the teapot. I want most of the shadows to be soft there, but there's one sort of line across the top of the teapot, which is quite nice, and I'm going to try and keep that as a hard line. Now, keep going with the edges of the wash. Coming round the handle of the cup there, I want to keep that light. Warming up the shadow of the teapot with some red. More negative painting. I've got to bring the wash around before it dries too much. Yeah, soften some of the edges on the teapot. And then continue the shadow under the teapot with the shadow on the teapot at this stage. Keep adding some paint while it's wet, it's fine. My brush is very soft, so it doesn't lift up the paint, the dry paint that's underneath, which can be a real problem. It can make mud when you do that. So it's really good to have a lovely soft squirrel mop brush. I need a bit of light area there, so I'm lifting off some of the paint. It is kind of damp, but I'm also wetting it and lifting it off with my tissue because it's not quite coming off quite as much as I want, because I want to have a shadow there from the teapot. That's right, I want a contrast there. And then bring the shadow onto the teacup. And round that chink of light on the side of the saucer. And then make a soft shadow on that cup and the saucer. I've got to keep in mind where the highlights are and the lighter areas and try and leave them. So those areas that we painted in the first wash will be left unpainted except for pattern that's going to come over them. I'm painting that shadow area, and I also don't want too many hard lines, so I'm also just softening some of those lines of the shadow. So it's like a broken edge. Now the shadow inside the cup. I need to establish that a bit more. And I want the weight of the shadow to be at the bottom of that shadow. So that's why I've just lifted the board a little bit. I normally paint flat, but lift it when I need to stick something under it. And I think that's just about done for the second layer. So I'm going to just finish here, just tidy up a little bit, soften some edges, and then I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to soften that bit there. I think that's it. This is my third layer now, and I want to reassess the shape of the teapot. There's a lovely sort of change of tone as the teapot rounds away from the light area, and also as it goes round the corner. I don't want a hard edge there that looks like a cutout. So I'm just trying to create an illusion of 3-dimension with the soft pinky colour there. Of course I'm going to be painting the pattern on top of it, but it's good to try and get the shape right. I need to do the top as well, the top of the teapot, where it flattens out. That's right. Now I'm just painting a little bit there, maintaining a bit of an edge, bringing it out from the background, continuing to soften that edge of the red there. And I'm not managing very well, so I just give it a good old dab, and then just creating the shape of the spout. It's more in a shadow area. Just before I start the pattern, I'm just trying to sort of a little bit of a darker area there on the top of the teapot. Always doing negative painting to keep the shapes. And then I'm just taking my little nylon brush and softening that edge there. It's not a hard edge. I'm now painting the pattern on the cup and the teapot. I've speeded it up a little bit because it can get a little bit tedious, because it takes a bit of time to do it. And I've got to try and do these ellipses. I can see the ellipse on my cup isn't quite right. Let's just get the pattern on the front of the teapot. I don't want to create a pattern that is just exactly as it is. I don't want a photographic view. I want a sort of essence of pattern, which isn't so easy, but I just will actually soften the edges. I definitely don't want the pattern going through that highlight there. I want it to fade into the highlight. Then you've got to get the sort of the rounded feel of the teapot. So you've got to make sure that your pattern shows that rounded feel. So it's bits of sort of pink flowers, some greenery, and some sort of stalks. Just soften as I go. And there's that ellipse again at the bottom of the teapot. It's so difficult, because even though you might have drawn it right, when you come to paint, just one little crack of paint can send your ellipse looking really peculiar. Just decorating the top of the teapot, and then on the handle there's a bit of a pattern there. And now let's do the cup. It is quite a balance to know how much and how little to put in there. Apologise for turning my painting round, but it's the only way I can paint those ellipses. I have to get it painting sort of vertically when I'm doing an ellipse. Just painting the sort of getting the shadows underneath the teapot, and I think I need to re-establish the shadow area on the side of the cup and the pot. Just softening those shadow areas and adding some between the pot and the cup. Now I want to take my little nylon brush and lift out some of those reflected light in the shadow area on the teapot. I love those little areas. It really shows off porcelain well. Taking my rigger, and I have a few lines to put in. So let's have a go with the top of the teapot, and on the edge of the lid there's quite a dark line. I don't want to stripe all the way along. It's quite hard. It's another balancing act. Just a few stripes here and there. This edge of this cup has got a nice dark area, but actually I can see there's a bit of paint there, so I'm lifting the bit of paint. It's messing up my ellipse there, so I'll just come back to that in a minute. Let's do the edge of the saucer here. See, I'm just doing it in little bits, not all the way along. It's as if the light is catching it here and there. Adding a bit more to that teapot. Now let's have a go with that edge of the cup. To get that shape right. I think that'll do. Just add a little bit more paint to it. Then a bit more on the edge of the saucer. And then maybe establish, a little bit of shadow there in the spout of the teapot. And under the teapot and under the cup again, a little bit more dark. There's a nice little dark line under there. Yep, still sorting out that little curve there. Now I've decided that the shadow area on the right hand side is darker than the area on the left where I wanted a similar tone. So I'm just re-establishing a bit of background tone there. And as long as you sort of paint with similar colours that's underneath, it'll work out all right. You won't get too much mud. So I mean, that's had a few layers on it now. Now's the time to reassess the painting and see what needs to be done. If there are any little bits to be lifted out, pieces of paint in the wrong place. So let's have a look and see what else I need to do. That balance looks a little bit better. I might add a little bit more dark to that area. I'm just getting that curve right. I think it's just about done. Lifting a few crunchy bits there. I think that's just about it. Here is the finished painting. I do hope you've really enjoyed watching me paint porcelain, paint my grandmother's teapot and cup.
Wow, Di, that was absolutely wonderful and so incredibly special. Just absolutely beautiful and and special and appropriate for how we're all feeling at the moment, and what a wonderful cup of tea does for all of us. So that's incredibly special. Thank you so much. Just a huge thank you for all the wonderful video and the effort you put into tonight's presentation. I think it's very, very inspiring for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And hugely appreciated. I just want to see if there's quite a few comments coming through here. Yes. I just want to see what they say. Just fabulous, Di. Your sketches are so inspiring. Fabulous, Di. So lovely. Thank you. Amazing. Quite a few comments coming through. So I think, just wonderful.
That's great.
Here's another one. Amazing. Yes, can you see the comments as they come through? I'm not sure if you can see them. But yes, hugely appreciated for the amount of work. Yeah, Judy, such a special evening from all of us. Yeah. And I love this demo. Thank you, from Chris. Much appreciated. Can you email us a picture of the actual painting for us to include in our newsletter? Would be wonderful.
Yes, do that. Yes.
To see. Anything else? Anybody? I haven't got any questions. Okay. When Rousseau also said completely inspiring and absolutely wonderful, Di. Thank you, Di. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Yes.
So, and Nolene says, tell Di that was so special.
Lovely. That's great. It was lovely to be there with them all. Lovely, you lovely people.
I think so too. I think we've got a wonderful society and all lovely people. Here's a message from Carol. Thanks so much, Di. Beautiful painting.
Yes.
Very.
Yes.
Well, I need to find this again. Very inspiring. And one from Kathy J. What a wonderful demo. Thank you. Your use of line and light incorporates so much life into your work. Just lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with. Just really nice.
Yes.
And also, so, yeah, from Sean Regachnik, so lovely to hear your story and travels and how you have shifted during this time to share what you do so well. Yeah, I also wanted to just comment. Thank you so much for sharing with everybody. We can't all be in the hospitals helping, but we can certainly share and inspire and help each other along.
Yes.
And to, you know, keep us positive. We'll get over this. We will. It'll go away. Karen Burns says, does you only do?
Karen, no, I do mixed media and I do acrylics. I paint quite large acrylics. I quite like doing sort of abstracted landscapes in acrylics still, which I love, and then the watercolor as well. So sort of, water media and of course the sketching. I tend to do more watercolor sketching, whereas a lot of my friends are more pen and ink. I have tried pen, but I get too bogged down with the details, I think, with pens. So it's better to just go with the watercolor lately.
Good. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Di. I'm going to say good night.
Yes.
And thanks to everybody for joining in. There's still more comments coming in. Diane, super stunning, a true professional. You can,
Adele, yes.
Yeah.
Super.
Okay. Which is great. That was really lovely.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank
so
you
much.
Yeah.
And I'll be in touch with you.